So moving into our last two topics, we'll try to move through this one a little bit more quickly because I think there's probably a lot of thoughts on Luke Skywalker, which we're finishing the day with. So Rey and Kylo Ren. I don't know if this one will be as much of a hot button topic because, in my opinion, I thought their story was fine in the movie. I'm sure there's some dissenting opinions, as there are in most situations. So, if anyone did not necessarily like the whole Reylo dynamic, let's hear it.
I wouldn't
I
say I
think
didn't
the
like
problems with Rey and Kylo Ren are the same problems with Luke because their story together kind of is used in those story points with Luke closing himself off. And him closing himself off is a good contradiction to them trying to bring each other together, albeit that they have different morals and they have different wants and they have different needs. Within the Force, they're both being selfish at that point. Both Rey and Kylo Ren are being extremely selfish with one another. Luke's his selfishness, turns himself away. So I think the issues with Kylo Ren and Rey continuously connecting with one another is a joint expression of being the substitute for Luke being completely closed off the entire time. I didn't mind the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff. I just wish that it was being done in such a way where kind of like if you had to use the original trilogy for an example, all of the times where Luke and Vader were sensing each other in the Force, even to the extent of that deleted scene where Luke is building his lightsaber and then Vader senses him throughout the Force, and it was supposed to be the original beginning of Return of the Jedi. It didn't change who the characters were, right? It was just they were supposed to sense each other.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It just made it for a complete, like, I guess I don't want to. I'm going to use the word disrespect of how two entities can connect within the Force, and how the person who can most be connected to the Force, Luke Skywalker, chose not to be the entire time. So Luke cut himself off from the Force, right? He doesn't know that Kylo Ren and Rey are speaking to one another until he walks in like a parent and seeing something he's not supposed to from his teenagers hanging out in the basement. That's how he finds out that the kid who put him on this entire path towards wearing dark robes and milking sea cow things.
Oh, that part was terrible.
I got so much to say about that. The only time is him, like, there's no way, and there are also other times, and this is turning into more of a Luke thing, but there are also times where Luke senses stuff within the Force, like Rey doing all this, who are you? All of this stuff, like sensing Rey throughout the Force, and then that's the time that he doesn't sense Rey is the one time that his nephew, the Skywalker blood that he says that Skywalker blood coursing through his veins, that's the time where the Force being cut off from doesn't work. Turned into more of a Luke thing, but I apologize.
No,
Rey
I think
not that bad. The fight scene at the end, I don't think they even touched anybody with their lightsabers.
That's a funny video if you watch the breakdown on that.
Oh my gosh, their lightsabers didn't even touch anybody. Oh, and the only other Rey thing that I have a problem with is when she's training with the lightsaber on Ahch-To. There's a shot where it's like it's from below her, and I don't know why. I don't know if they didn't have other principal photography or anything for that scene, but it's just Rey going like this with the lightsaber back and forth, and she'll do a different move. They'll cut back to it. She'll slice. They'll cut back to it. She'll slice the other way, and she's not even hitting anything. It's like she's doing a hula hoop with her lightsaber. It wasn't that bad, but that's it for my Kylo Ren, Rey Ren. I've got so much to say about Luke Skywalker, though.
So I liked the Kylo Ren and Rey. I think personally, it's probably the best part of the movie. And I know, like, for some people, you're gonna be like, well, the bar was low. But for people who do like the movie, I do think that this is why they do like the movie. I think the Rey and Kylo Ren story is strong enough throughout the 2 hours or so to carry the whole movie, which I think the two of them did. maybe like you said, in spite of the fact that their story has to happen because Luke pulls away. So I do think
Yep.
there's a picture there. But I do think both actors just did an incredible job in this movie. If you look at the three films, I think this one is the crowning jewel for the two of them together, which they have a lot of time together in this one. The Force Awakens, they only get a few minutes. I'm not a big fan of episode 9, so I'm biased there. But this movie, they do get a lot of time together, and I thought it was pretty good. As far as like the romance deal where they like touch fingers or whatever, I thought that was kind of weird, awkward, and definitely proves that he's been alone at Jedi Academy for his whole life. You know, that kind of gives off those vibes. But otherwise, I do think they have a pretty strong part in the movie. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't really care too much about it. I mean, it's fine. It didn't bother me. Like, it was fine. I kind of wish she would have like went with him and turned dark. That would have been great to have Dark Ray and just Kylo being Kylo and them just running amok around the galaxy. That would have been awesome. But yeah, it doesn't bother me that much. They're fine. They get a
Imagine
pass.
the end of the movie was Rey turning to the dark side, and that's how the movie ends.
That'd be beautiful.
That would have been awesome.
That'd
And
be
then
beautiful.
Rise of Skywalker is her coming back and switching from the dark side to the light side, and that's how Rise of Skywalker
And
kicks
still being a
off.
Skywalker.
Exactly.
Oh no! Stop!
But that's the
Stop.
thing. Like, I think it would have made it more like palatable if going into Rise of Skywalker, you're like, because okay, if you're gonna do the whole
Like
original
Empire ended on a
yeah, exactly. Empire.
Yes,
they
I agree.
lost. It sucked for them at the end. Luke loses his hand. Han's in carbonite. Like
The rebels
that's
didn't win.
Exactly. And if they were going to push Rey to be the one who's flying the Millennium Falcon around, being Han Solo's daughter in some sort of way, like the Force Awakens, and having such a connection to him for only knowing him for like what 4 days, having her turn to the dark side like and being gone, like Han Solo being in carbonite, would have been such a cool thing for the end of that movie.
That would have been a cool parallel.
Yeah, Rey being so in the dark side was such a cool thing that was missed throughout the entire sequels. And what stinks even more is knowing that they were planning it the entire time.
Yeah.
Like with the Duel of the Fates script at the end. So I don't know.
In the comments, we're getting a few people that do really, they're okay with the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff. I think that's probably a pretty universal thing. Like, it's not, turning too many people off. The Falcon scene on Crate, that was an awesome scene. I did like that as well. Ricky did not like how Rey's force ability happened so fast. Luke had to train, but they made Rey look like a Jedi Master, especially that scene with Rey and Kylo Ren fighting the Praetorian Guards. So there, I agree with that. Like, she does get, everything immediately. She can fly a ship. She can, wield a lightsaber. She can use the Force. She can.
I think I wrote it down.
Whatever.
What Snoke says.
But go ahead.
No, Snoke. Okay, when Snoke is originally talking to Kylo Ren at the beginning of the movie, and he's like, "Bring me the girl," kind of deal. The throwaway line to like for fans to understand that Rey is just like weirdly powerful in the Force. Not only the Force, but like also lightsaber combat, which no Force user has ever just picked up a lightsaber and been like, "I'm really strong in the Force. I know how to use a lightsaber."
That's true.
That's nothing that's ever happened. That's what the entire Jedi Temple is for. Yes, honing your Force abilities, but Anakin Skywalker, who they all thought was the chosen one, still had to learn how to use a lightsaber. He didn't just know. Like, he might have been really good and have good instincts with it, but not to take down somebody who was trained by Luke Skywalker. Okay, but the throwaway lines is bested by a girl who's never held a lightsaber.
He does say that.
He says that to Kylo Ren, and then he's like, "Oh man!" And then he starts punching his helmet in the elevator.
Yeah,
I thought about including the whole helmet thing as well, but I thought I may have too many tangents. Lex, what do you think about this?
I mean, honestly, I didn't really mind it. It's not my favorite thing, but I think out of all of the things that The Last Jedi does, that one isn't like the worst. I mean, I don't care for it. It's not like, oh my god, I love Reylo, but I'm also not like, oh, I hate them. But I'm kind of in the middle about it, to be honest.
They're just there. That's fair.
Yeah, it happens, but.
And I think for critics, I think you all probably describe yourself as critics of the film. The fact that Rey and Kylo Ren are palatable probably does speak to the fact that they did an okay job. Patrick, what do you think?
I don't. Here's the thing. I thought it was very predictable from the first episode that they would be an item. I 100% thought that. And I think the audience was, okay, I'm going to be sold this story. I can go with it. But the problem I have starts right away with the writing. For instance, if you watch any interviews, and they're with Adam Driver specifically, you'll hear how he had so much of an idea of his character and where the arc of that character will end from the first movie. Right from the first movie. He knew what was going to happen to his character. And I think that's why he could be so deliberate in his short lines and the way he perceived his body motions. Because a lot of time when you're wearing a mask, you can't always see the anger or the frustrations or any of that stuff. So you have to get it through the body language. So for him, being such a great actor and really demanding that information and then working with the writers to have an understanding of how to develop his part of his role was very helpful. I think it then screwed up the whole Reylo could have been better, or both characters could have been a little bit better if the writers took advantage of knowing that about Kylo and knowing where the hell Rey was going to end up. So I think the problem is when Rey, no one knew, was Rey going to be a Palpatine? Was Rey going to be a Kenobi? Was Rey going to be, I think no one knew what she was going to be. Even the actress said at the end of it all, Daisy Ridley said that, she didn't know, they weren't quite sure who and what she was going to be until that last, probably halfway filming the last movie.
Right.
So I think that alone speaks volumes of why it all fell apart. Because if she knew where her character came from, think about how you say certain lines, right? And I'll just use this example. You can say, dude, right? Dude, I'm happy to see you. You could be in a horror movie and be like, dude, So if you know where your character is going, you know how to portray the character. So I think the bad, horrible writing and parts of it really makes the whole sequel trilogy fall apart because there's so many plot holes. You have to create a whole nother movie, a couple $1 million of a movie budget to correct everything and the storylines on this one. I get it, the ideas of how Rey became so powerful, that always bothered me as well. But whatever, maybe she's a gifted prodigy. It just came. The Force is strong. They're a dyad, whatever. But I feel that for them to be better connected, they could have really portrayed their roles better, knowing where certain characters were going to be. If she knew she was a Palpatine in this movie, think about how the interactions could have been so much better. Like when they're fighting to grab that lightsaber, maybe she's kind of like, maybe I shouldn't try as hard. And then like she sees like, no, I can't let him have it, and she's trying again. Those are the things that an actor could put into play that makes it better. So even if you have a little bit, like Jack Nicholson is a great example of that. You give him a piece of the script to say, okay, in The Departed, you're going to go and you're going to execute this woman and you're going to throw in a ditch and you're going to laugh and like, wow, she fell funny. That story he talks about her falling funny. And he says, now that's good. But if I add this and I say this, that adds a little bit more. And if I continue going, so give the actors the right tools so they can do the best of their craft. And I guarantee that movie would have been a little bit better, just a little bit. And we could have maybe kind of not been so divisive over it. But again, when we get to the next topic, I think you're going to see why everything all falls apart, in my opinion.
For sure.
So I will let that you segue into that next piece.
Yield to the comments
on Reylo at this point. But again, if they knew if Kylo knew where he was going, Adam Driver knew where that character's going, and if Daisy Ridley knew where her character, it could have been much better acted, and you could have seen better performances, and it would have made the scenes more meaningful.
I don't disagree with that. I've always thought it was interesting that Adam Driver did know J.J. Abrams' whole picture, and really no one else did, because they did keep changing things. So that, I think you're right there with how they portrayed the characters. Maybe it could have changed.